Hello, this is Johan from Dark Tranquillity, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, hey, what's up, guys? Episode 192 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Johan Reinholdz from Dark Tranquillity, Andromeda, Non-Exist, Skyfire, Murdered Beats, and Continuum, and probably a plethora of other bands I don't even know about. So how are you doing today, Johan?
I'm good. I'm good. You?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's a
Yeah,
good
it's
good morning.
early.
Yeah, it's like 10 in the morning my time,
Oh,
but
sorry.
yeah, it's all good. I'm pretty much an early bird anyway.
Okay, that's good. I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah. So, kind of like the format is, I want to talk about like your musical history and pretty much do a rundown of your discography. But take me back to young
Sure.
Johan. So, kind of growing up in Sweden, what were the first bands that got you into metal, and what made you want to start playing guitar?
I think, well, the first band was Europe, uh, late 80s. I'm born 1980, and yeah, as we know, they were very popular in the second half of the 80s. So me and a couple of friends in class in school, we were really into Europe, and so we started taking guitar lessons at the local music school, which is kind of after school thing in Sweden. Like you can, like in every town there is a school where you can get lessons uh that is not too expensive, so you don't have to take private lessons that are super expensive, so it's pretty nice. So we started playing guitar like 89, and then 91 I got into more like the real heavy bands like Metallica, Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Megadeth, Slayer, Sepultura, yeah, all the Swedish death metal bands, Entombed and all that stuff. So that was the first inspiration was Europe, and then it was all those um, thrash death bands of the late 80s, early 90s. That was kind of the first inspirations for me.
All right. And kind of like doing my research, I was looking up your pages on like Metal Archives and Wikipedia, and I think your first band was Morbid Demons, and you did the Enter the Crypts of Hell demo from '93. Tell me about Morbid Demons.
Yeah, that was, yeah, the probably the first like band thing that I was in, like doing. It was just with a couple of friends, and it's more like a rehearsal demo really, but it was the first recording that I ever did, so it's included there. I think it's nice to have the whole discography. There's very like primitive death metal stuff. And I was 13, so like 13, 14, me and a couple of friends started fooling around, and well, actually, some of the like, yeah, we started doing our own songs, but there was also this kind of thing of almost like copying riffs and lyrics from other bands, and like, like the way you start as a creator of anything, you start by imitating. So that was kind of what we were doing, but also doing our own songs. So it was a lot of fun, those formative years, like 93 to 95, 96 something.
Yeah, yeah. I was trying to like find that first demo. I was trying to look it up online to listen to it, but I can't find it anywhere.
No, it's very obscure. It's more of a rehearsal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess after that, I'm also looking on your page on Metal Archives. I think there's a you're in it. We're in a band called Bullhead.
Yeah, that was more like a project with the guitar player from Skyfire, which is a old friend, like from the late 80s, early 90s, Martin Hanner, which he's like the main guy in Skyfire. So we just had a kind of a little project doing. So I don't know what kind of music it was, some kind of, I don't know, groovy metal something. I don't know. It was just a short-lived project, so you
All right.
can't really find that either.
Yeah.
Obscure
Yeah.
shit.
And then I guessing the next obscure stuff is Widow. Tell me about like that, because I know you did like like three demos with that band.
Yeah, that's still obscure, but those were actually demos that were printed in a couple of hundred, copies. So it was actually the first proper demos, as it were, that was like the kind of the second band with a group of other friends that were a couple of years later. So we got getting a bit older and maybe a bit better at our instruments. This is from like 95 to 99. So um, it was more kind of a mix between heavy metal and thrash. Like we're inspired by Pantera and Metallica and all those kind of bands from the 90s. And yeah, we did 3 demos and a bunch of shows locally. So it was a good learning period, actually.
All right. And I think after Widow, you did like kind of like like a little solo thing, because I know you did a 98 demo called Maiden Voyage.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a result of getting into more progressive bands, like from age 16 or something. I started practicing more guitar and, listening to Yngwie Malmsteen, Alan Holdsworth, Dream Theater, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Atheist, Genesis, Yes, King Crimson, all.
Yeah. Yeah. And then tell me about starting up Andromeda, because I know y'all formed in 99.
And I did 2 demos.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Yeah, I was saying like tell me. So then I think after that you started up Andromeda. So tell me about
Yeah.
how you knew the guys, because I know y'all formed in 99.
Yeah, correct. So the root, the kind of the origin of Andromeda are those 2 demos that I did that are more progressive metal. And so I was in contact with Wes Benedictor at War Music. He originally had another label called Wrong Again Records, which released the first Arch Enemy album, the first In Flames and such, Eucharist. And he lives here in the area, like this region I live in. So I started, getting in contact with him, and he was a big guitar freak and yeah, into fusion, progressive stuff. So I sent those demos to him, and he was like, "Oh, I want to release an album with this stuff." And that later became, or not so much later, actually, in 99, 98, 99, I signed a deal with him for Andromeda. And then he actually, he knew about this drummer, Thomas Leon, which played in a local band. And he knew he was really into progressive drumming. So he put us together. And then Thomas knew Martin Hedin, the keyboard player, and he also knew the first bass player, Yat Down. So that was the first like lineup of Andromeda in 99.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and hard to believe next year will of course mark 25 years of Andromeda as a band. Like, did you think that y'all be around for 25 years?
I don't know. Hard to say, but we're not really around anymore. So because we're not very active at all. So the band hasn't really been active since 2016, 17. So, but yeah, we did a lot of good stuff with Andromeda that I'm proud of. But as of right now, we're not really active as a band.
Yeah. But tell me about
Actually,
like that first Andromeda album, Extension of the Wish. I
yeah.
think that what was like the thought process going into making the debut Andromeda album?
So the thought process was like Wes, this guy at the record company who put kind of signed and wanted to do this thing. He thought that it should be like my progressive demos, but like proper songs, like with vocals. And I was all for that. So that was kind of the thing to do, like a progressive metal album with not only instrumental. But yeah, I was very influenced by Dream Theater, I would say. But then we did the production was we had a Daniel Bergstrand as the producer, who did, he did Strapping Young Lad, Meshuggah, In Flames, etc., etc. So I think the thought was to have a bit more of a rough production, not so slick as, for example, Dream Theater or Face Warning, which is more of a slick sound, but to have it a bit more rough. But yeah, the music was definitely in the vein of those bands.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds really good. Good. And I love, like, of course, you had the session vocalist,
Oh yeah.
Lawrence Macquarie, great
Yeah.
because it couldn't find a permanent vocalist. But then, of course, I know you did a reissue of it where it was
Yeah.
re-recorded with David
Yes.
Kremberg, for
Yes.
which what was sort of like the reason sort of like did like the reissue with sort of like the different vocals?
Yeah, question, because that's confusing, because we had another singer was supposed to do the album, but he turned out to not deliver. Like, he wasn't prepared when we were supposed to start recording, so we said like, okay, sorry, but we have to do it without you. So then Daniel Bergstrand, the producer, he is a good friends with Lawrence, who he does a lot of session work, and he works with Darkane and a bunch of other stuff. So those two, they did the vocal arrangements and lines and everything with my lyrics. They did it very fast, very good. Good job, definitely. But Lawrence was always, yeah, he was just a session vocalist. So then we got David, and that was a friend of Martin's, the keyboard player, and he came into the band, I'd say 2000 sometime, because we did the first gig ever we did in Copenhagen. So that was before the album came out, but that was with David. And then we had interest from a French label called NTS, which I don't know if they're still around, but they had muscle, they had money and resources, and they did a lot of the like progressive and power metal bands in France, like releasing the albums in France. And so they thought, oh, you have this new, like, you permanent and singer now, so why don't you re-record the vocals with him, and we can do like so it would be like something special for France, and like, this is the real deal, this is the permanent singer now. So we got some money from them, and then we recorded the vocals, remixed it, I think, also. And there were a few passages on the original recording where there was supposed to be vocals. There were lyrics to it, but when they did the session vocals, they didn't really have the time to fix all that. So we actually added some passages on the David version, which is not on the original version. So that was good, I think, also. And we did 2 bonus tracks, Eclipse and Journey of Polyspheric Experience. So that was a thought, just to update it for the French market. But then our label here, they actually did a reissue again with different cover, but with the new audio, the new tracks. Yeah. So the first album is in, like, I don't know, 5-6 different versions, because there's a Korean version with another bonus track, there's a Japanese, there's the French one, then there's the original one, then there's the reissue by our regular label with a different cover. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to like keep up, like saying which one should I go to, like
yeah, I prefer the David version, because I think he does better justice to the songs, and you have all the passages with vocals as it was supposed to be. So I like. But I know some people prefer Lawrence, but it's a taste.
Yeah.
Taste issue.
Yeah, different strokes for different folks.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I know around the 2001 or 2002, you started up Non-Exist. So tell me about like that.
That was the origins of Non-Exist was kind of the same as those progressive demos I did. I was playing in this like high school band, Widow, and now, because I always, like I said from the start, I was really into death metal, thrash metal, so I wanted to do some songs like more brutal, and so I did some demos, and I also played it to Wes, the record label guy, and he said, oh, we should do an album with this too. So it was kind of the same time I signed the contract for Andromeda. I signed the contract with the same label for Non-Exist. And that was the time when Johan Leva was let go from Arch Enemy, and they were kind of living in the same town or region, the record label guy and Johan Leva. And actually, Wes, he had already released the first Arch Enemy album on his label, so they also knew each other from that time. And so he suggested, why don't you get Johan Leva as a vocalist for Non-Exist? And so I said, as I was or still am a big fan of the first three Arch Enemy albums, I said, sure, that's great.
Same here.
So that was how that happened. And then we also had Matte Modin from Dark Funeral, The Flesh, etc., doing the drums.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, but tell me about making that first album, Deuce Deceptor, during Hard to Believe last year was the 20-year anniversary of that album. So what was that like? Because I know it's like heavier than Andromeda.
Yeah. So yeah, I wrote like a majority of the music I wrote. Like there was a couple of riffs that Johan Leva came with, but most of the songs were my demos. And then Johan Leva did most of the lyrics and the vocal arrangements. We sent the demos to Matte, and he learned the songs on the drums. And then we just met up in Abyss Studios, Peter Techtgren's studio, but we actually recorded in the kind of the B studio with his older brother Tommy Techtgren. It's way up in Sweden, like out in the forest, and you're just sleeping in this kind of it's just a studio way out in the woods, and you get I remember kind of getting cabin fever a bit. But it was pretty concentrated. I think we spent like 2 max 3 weeks in there doing the album, and that was that. Music wise, it was kind of just combining death, thrash metal, like everything from blast beats to like the Slayer beat style, and but mixing with some heavier parts, melodic parts, and there are some kind of proggy riffs in there too, so a bit of an Andromeda thing also, but it's just, I guess, just my style, but basically just a mix of brutal and melodic death metal. And but then after that album, there kind of nothing happened with the band, so it was kind of a hiatus for I would say 10 years before we did the second album. So nothing really, we never played it. We never played even one show on the first album, so kind of just released it, and that was that.
All right, because I know also in 2002 you did a little one-off thing with Opus Atlantica, go with the self-titled. Tell me about like that.
Oh yeah, it's also a local record label from here that they just wanted to do, I guess, a kind of a project album with
Regain Records.
Pete Sandberg. Regain Records. That's actually the guy who had Wrong Again Records together with Wes that I was involved with. So it's a small world, especially here in Sweden. Everyone knows almost everyone. Anyway, so there was like the bass player Jonas Reinhold and the singer Pete Sandberg, which is like an old veteran. He sang in a band called Alien and done some other kind of more like glam rock stuff. He's a bit older. He's from like the 80s, 90s, like that generation. And there were some really good musicians on that album, and that was just like a session thing that I just got paid to play on it, and it was fun, but I wasn't involved in like anything else than just a session musician, but it was fun.
Okay. And then back to Andromeda, then the second album, 2=1. I think that's a pretty good follow-up to Extension of the Wish, because usually with the debut album, you have your entire life to write, and there's a lot of hype with the first album. When it came to making 2=1, did you feel like pressure to follow up Extension of the Wish?
No, we didn't really think like that. Well, yeah, but the reviews for Extension of the Wish, as I remember it, were very positive. So yeah, but we didn't really feel any pressure, because at that time we had some more songwriters in the band, because the first album I basically wrote everything, and then on the second album, especially Martin Hedin, the what I'm saying, guitar player, I mean keyboard player, he was starting to write a lot of music, because he just like me, we're pretty like strong-minded and we have a lot of ideas. And so it was a good team with him, because he was writing a lot of progressive stuff, and he had already played with a drummer together in another project band. So they already had, they were on the same wavelength with the stuff, and he was writing his stuff, which is really good. And also we were writing together actually then as a band, which turned out to be less and less. It's just the way it goes sometimes, that kind of thing. Writing in the rehearsal room for me was just a period of time where it was nice and convenient and it worked. But then later on, we wrote more like in pairs or ourselves, at home in home studio. But anyway, so we had Martin as a songwriter too, and I think David wrote some stuff also on it, and I think Thomas, the drummer, he was more involved in his parts. So we had a lot of stuff already after Extension to start doing the next album. So it just went very naturally to the next album, that Two Is One, which is pretty different than from Extension, because we have just more than just one songwriter. So
Yeah. And I know this year does mark 20 years of Two Is One. So how do
yeah,
you feel about it now, 20 years later, as opposed to when you first put it out?
I think it holds up over time. I think it stands the test of time. I'm still really proud of that album. I think yeah, most of the material is really solid. The production is pretty organic. It's a bit homemade, so to speak. Like, I mean, it's maybe not the most professional sounding because we were producing it ourselves mainly. But I kind of like the sound anyway because it's very organic and yeah, dynamic. And so I'm really proud of that album. I think it's very special, and I think it seems to be a lot of fans seems to have that as their favorite Andromeda album. That one or Extension of the Wish, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm still really proud of the album.
Yeah. And I also want to touch upon Continuum and Murdered Beats. Were there's what tell me about like those. I'm just curious, like chronologically,
Yeah,
where did those fall in?
yeah. I think Continuum was just like a solo project I had for a while, doing more electronic music, and which is Murdered Beats also is more of a solo project I had. Or with another one, we were a duo, but there's more electronic music basically, which I still do. I still write that stuff. Like on my I did 2 solo albums recently, and there were guitars on there, but there were also a lot of electronic stuff that has nothing to do with metal or rock or even playing the guitar. So I always liked that kind of music, and I've been writing that kind of stuff for a long time too. So, but those two things were mainly just small solo projects I had. So very obscure once again.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Good to clear that up. So kind of
Yeah.
talking about the next Andromeda album, Chimera.
Mhm.
Chimera,
Yeah.
I like that album. What was that like going from Two Is One to Chimera?
I think that also was, when you have that kind of initial phase of a band where uh, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and everyone is still, people are still not tired of each other and stuff, that always happens with, any type of relationship. So there was a lot of like positive energy still, and it was, again, it was quite natural where to go, because Two Is One is pretty damn proggy. It's pretty, at times, pretty inaccessible, intricate. So what we wanted to do with Chimera was to go kind of a bit more straightforward, even though there are some really progressive stuff on that album, like for example Inner Circle, or what a Blink of an Eye, and Going Under is pretty intense. But I mean, there are some songs on Chimera that are way more straightforward. So that was kind of the idea of that album, doing it a bit more,
Yeah.
bit more accessible. I think the production is a bit, maybe sounds a bit more professional, but
Yeah.
I think most of the Andromeda albums are a bit under budgeted and
Yeah.
underproduced in a way. So because yeah, we didn't have the biggest budgets to work with, so we did the best we could. But I'm still really pleased with Chimera. I think it's really cool album. The cover is nice, pretty simplistic. That's once again, Niklas Sundin, Dark Tranquillity.
Yeah.
who I was in contact with already before Extension, were talking about doing cover stuff. So he did the cover
Yeah.
for both those Extension covers, front covers, and he also did the cover for Chimera.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's a pretty damn good cover with sort of like it's all white with the, I guess, the little baby thing.
yeah, it's pretty creepy. I like it. I like sometimes it's cool with a less is more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So less is more attitude, because that went hand in hand with the music, and 2 is 1 was very proggy, and the artwork on 2 is 1 is really cool, but that's more fitting with the music because it's way more intricate with all the molecules and eyes and shit stuff.
Yeah. And I also think tone wise, it's like the best like guitar sounding album to date.
Mm. Yeah, could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, pretty nice guitar sound on that one.
Oh yeah.
I'm not all. There's been a couple of albums I've done that I'm not really pleased with the guitar sound. So, but that one is pretty good.
Yeah. And then tell me about like the next album, The Immunity Zone. And hard to believe this year is the 15-year anniversary of that album. So how was the thought process making that album?
Um, then it wasn't as things progress over time. There is different energies and different levels of enthusiasm, or maybe people are on different wavelengths. But so it wasn't that natural where to go. So I think it's more like a continuation of Chimera, kind of middle of the road proggy. It's still proggy, but it's still, there are some straightforward songs also, like Ghost on Retinas, Shadow of a Lucent Moon. But it also has like Veil of Illumination, which I wrote, which is, it's the longest song we made. I think it's like 16, 17 minutes. Because on the first 2 albums we had like in the tradition of Rush or Dream Theater, we had an instrumental song. On the third one we didn't, so I think on Immunity Zone I wanted to do that, but it actually turned out to be a song with vocals and instrumental, so it was one big pile of shit. Not shit, but one big pile, what turned out to be Veil of Illumination, which is 70 minutes. But
Yeah.
I'm really pleased with that song. It's pretty epic. I think I like the instrumental part better than the part with vocals.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the vocals. It was more like, I don't know. I think the whole instrumental section could have been a song itself and just skip the rest.
Yeah.
But that album, the production to me is a bit not as good. I'm not really pleased with the guitar sound. The front cover I don't really like. I think it's oh, I don't know. But there are some, I'm still really pleased with that album too. There are some really good songs, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Like
maybe
you
not as maybe not as hard hitting as Chimera. I think for me it's the kind of the same album, but yeah,
yeah.
basically the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on Veil of Illumination. I feel like it encompasses pretty much more of the standard prog functions, from the choppy rhythms intertwined with the
Yeah,
flashy leads, and sort of like the ebb
yeah,
and flow of the heavier and lighter, and just the revolving door of instruments in the forefront to into account. And I just think it's a really good song overall and a great way to
yeah. Thank
close
you,
out the album.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that long song, for me it's pretty uh, self-evident. Sometimes it should be the last song on the album. So that was
Yeah.
pretty a given. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course in 2005 you actually kind of joined up Skyfire, and I think your first release with the band was the Fractal EP in '09. Tell me about like hooking up with those guys.
Well, the thing is that going back to those first bands I did, 94 or something, that was with Martin Hanner, that is like the main guy in Skyfire, and we had one of the bands we had then was called Crimson Tears, and it was the original drummer from Skyfire, Tobias, which is an old friend, and Martin. So then I left Crimson Tears and joined Widow, but Crimson Tears became Skyfire. So really, I've known those guys forever. So it was more like the bass player in Skyfire quit, and then Martin took over the bass, and then they asked me, "Do you want to play guitar?" I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And I didn't play on the Fractal EP, I think, but the first album I played on was
Esoteric.
Esoteric, which I think is a great album. It's cool. But that album, sorry, that band hasn't been very active for a long time also. So I'm I've written some, tried to write some stuff for the band, but in the end it wasn't used. So, but that's fine, because I'm not that invested in that band. It was basically I do some, solo guitar work when they release and when they do a release, and that's about it. Because we haven't played live in a long time, and yeah, the band is pretty inactive. So, but it's a good band, for sure.
Yeah,
it's a pity. We should do more with that band, but yeah, but now I'm pretty busy with other stuff, so it's fine by me too.
Like Manifest Tyranny by Andromeda. So tell me
Oh,
about like making
yeah.
that album. I kind of got ahead of myself.
I think at that time our keyboard player, yeah, he was writing some stuff still, but I think I was writing more music now than him. But he was really writing a lot of the lyrics and getting. It's not a concept album, but there was an overall concept, I think, from his side about a lot of political lyrics and lyrics about, um, like socially aware, more like political stuff. So there's a lot of stuff on that album from that kind of view, and like some samples. There's some Barack Obama samples. There's samples from, all these different political people. And I thought it was cool, but I think it alienated, difficult word, alienated some people that thought it was, getting a bit too maybe preachy or whatever. The music, I think to me, Manifest Tyranny is a bit heavier, harder than Chimera and the Immunity Zone. So I think for me, I favor that album, I think, over those two. And I think there's some really good songs on the album. I think Survival of the Richest is probably one of my favorite Andromeda songs of all time. I think it turned out really good. And also like songs like Play Dead and Lies Are Us is actually a short, pretty straightforward song. So it's cool. And then we even have some, like, there's some blast beats in Play Dead. The first song, preemptive, what's it called? Preemptive Strike. Yeah. It's like 2-3 minutes. So it's very short, very brutal, kind of almost a bit thrash metally. And also some really soft stuff like Go Back to Sleep is a beautiful, not a ballad, but it's non-distorted kind of song. So I think there is some really strong songs on that album. Yeah, so I'm really pleased with it, actually.
Yeah, but then of course it was around 2011, 2012 you started back up, non-exist. So how'd you end up like reforming the band?
I don't know. For me, it was just I just got the inspiration again to do the non-exist kind of style. So I started writing some songs in thinking about non-exist, because I always like that concept to write. When I write stuff, I kind of, or to have like a moniker or a category to put the songs that I write, that put them into. So for me, it makes it more inspirational to think, oh, now I want to do that kind of album, and then I kind of conceptualized how kind of what I'm gonna write. For me, the limitations could be freeing in a way. It sounds paradoxical, but if you're free to do anything, then it's hard to get a direction. So for me, it was like just thinking about non-exist and getting inspired or writing a new album for this band. But then this second album, from My Cold Dead Hands, it turned out pretty different than the first album because it was like 10 years later. But actually, there was one non-exist album that I threw away because I wrote one more album after the first one, but I scrapped like I think almost all that material is scrapped, is still lying on, a hard drive. But I didn't think it was good enough. But then I wrote the second album, and I contacted Johan Leva again, and he was up for doing another album, and we ended up doing 2 albums together more. So we did 3 albums together in Non-Existent. Then he quit, and then I've done 2 EPs and 1 full-length album, just me. So it's kind of just my solo project.
Yeah. Yeah, but tell me about like From My Cold Dead Hands, like were you like nervous at all like making another Non-Exist album, because there was like a 10-year gap between Deuce Deceptor and From My Cold Dead Hands?
No, not really, because I mean, Non-Exist is a very obscure project or band, so I didn't feel any real pressure. But I produced and recorded the album myself, so that was kind of, yeah, like a bit of a pressure, because I did almost everything on an album. But since they're not a huge huge amount of fans, there's not super big pressure. So it's mainly just fun, and it was fun to hang out with Johan again, and yeah, we socialized quite a bit during that time, and having fun finalizing the songs, because yeah, he wrote some lyrics, I wrote some lyrics, and I actually started doing some vocals also on those albums. So
yeah,
but basically just for fun, because we did just a few live shows, but mainly it was just for fun. So
yeah,
it was all good.
yeah. And then of course the final release, or the most recent one to date, the Crash Course EP, and hard to believe that's like that EP is now 10 years old. So tell me about like that thought process, making that the most recent release from you guys.
I think that's a misunderstanding, because it was just more like a compilation EP that's some label or something put out before a tour. Hence the name. So it's more like a introduction to the band. So it's not a real release.
Oh,
The last or latest, I don't know which it's gonna be, if it's gonna be the last or latest release, is actually the live DVD from Vietnam, which is called Live Vietnam.
yeah, yeah. But
Which I think is, we did another live DVD from Poland called Playing Off the Board, but I think the one from Vietnam is way better. I mean, the whole setting is a huge show at the National Stadium in Hanoi, and I think it's a great production. And some of the songs we are better on that version than on the studio version. So I think I'm really proud of that live DVD. I think it's really cool.
yeah,
So that's the latest. I think it came out in 16, 17. But
yeah,
there was no label really behind it wanting to release it, because every label said, DVDs are dead. It's cool. It's a cool recording, but we don't really see a market for DVDs anymore. So then we just said, fuck it, we're gonna release it ourselves. So we used, what's it called? Pledge.
Pledge Music.
Yeah, this crowdfunding label that turned out to be kind of a rip-off, and I think they're gone now. So we released it via crowdfunding, so it's not really an official release in that sense that it's available for everyone. But yeah, we sold it to the fans directly.
Cool.
So if you don't have it, I can maybe hook you up.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
be honored. But tell me about like the Throne of Scars by Non-Existent. I think that's a pretty good follow-up from the comeback album. Tell me about like that. Did you feel like more comfortable now that Non-Exist is sort of like back in the game?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. The production, I think, is pretty horrible. But because I did the album myself, and it's not the best. But there are some good songs, but some songs I really regret. Like the title track, I think is pretentious.
Yeah.
Like the way it's set up, and I don't know. It's okay, that album, but yeah, it's not my favorite.
Yeah. But it does have some good songs. I kind of like
Yeah.
Cathedrals Beyond, has a bit of a murky
Oh yeah,
garage
that's heavy.
to it. And I
It's
love
really, really heavy, I gotta say.
yeah, and I love like the keyboards are pretty much used kind of like sparingly, but not to great effect. But I feel like some of the transitions like on there could be a bit awkward.
Yeah, that's my, I guess, my progressive vein, doing this kind of like just confusing kind of transitions. But sometimes they work, sometimes maybe I have to be honest and say that it was maybe a bit over the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, that song is good. I think it's really heavy,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. Then kind of going into 2017, you did like the Liberation and Death EP from Skyfire. Tell me about like making that the most recent EP, because I think y'all did
Um,
it yourselves.
so that was, like I said before, it's mainly I was contacted by the guys to record the solos, and that's about the reach of, as a scope of my involvement with that release. I did the solos, and that's about it. I don't really know much about it otherwise, except from that. Sorry.
Then it's all good. But anyway, going back to Non-Exist, you did the EP in 2018 in Praise of Death. Tell me about like
Oh yeah,
that.
in Praise of Death. Well, so Levi, he quit in 15, and then I decided, because I already started singing a bit of backup and some passages here and there on those two albums. So then I thought, fuck it, I'm just gonna sing it all myself. So then I wanted to like introduce myself as the new vocalist. So I re-recorded some of the songs from previous albums with me on vocals. So there's a live version of Delirious Tongues, from the first album, Deus Deceptor. There's Dark and Tortured Universe, and what else? The New Flesh. So there's some songs from all the albums we recorded with my vocals, and that's called the New Flesh EP. And then after that, I did the In Praise of Death EP. What the thought behind that was to do a bit more like a tribute of some of the, like, the style of some of the bands I grew up with, like yeah, like the Florida band, the Swedish bands, and some of the melodic death metal bands. So I had some guests on it. I had Mikael Stanne from Tranquillity, who's now my bandmate.
Yeah.
I had Christopher Emmett, who also I knew since way back, since like we did some jams in something. And then we played together in Dark Tranquillity. He's doing a guest solo, and there's some other guest vocalists on there. And then I just added some songs, and then that became the latest Non-Exist album, like The Fearless Hunter, which
Yeah.
also has some more guests, like Braga, the singer from Merciless, which is one of my all-time favorites, like death thrash bands. He sang on a song, and there's who else? Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. There's like a
So
ton.
there was a lot of guests on those two releases, but the whole In Praise of Death EP is included in like the Fearless Hunter album. So it was kind of releasing half of the album first as an EP, and then the rest with the first half as an album.
Yeah. Now, what was that like
Music.
taking up lead vocals? Were you kind of like nervous at all, trying to like fill in like Johan's shoes?
Yeah, a bit, because we had a show and he had to quit, so I thought, fuck it, we're not gonna cancel any shows. The few shows we had, so I just I said, fuck it, I'm gonna try to do this playing and singing at the same time. And then so of course that's the most difficult, doing it live, but
Yeah.
but in doing it in the studio, you don't have to do it at the same time. So it went pretty well, because during that time I was singing a lot, so my voice was in pretty good shape. I'm not a super good singer, I know, but I was singing quite a bit, so I was kind of fit. Nowadays I don't hardly sing much either, ever. So when I'm gonna record new Non-Exist stuff, I have to get myself in shape. Okay, because singing is just like any other instrument. It's just like you have to keep your chops up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And do you think like singing kind of like expresses like another side of you creatively as to playing guitar?
yeah, definitely, I think so. I haven't really sung that much throughout the years, thinking back. Um, I worked a lot as a music teacher and as a guitar teacher, and then as a function of that, I've sung, when you're singing with students or whatever. And then I went to the music academy, which forced me to sing because there were mandatory courses in, both choir and also, with a private teacher singing. So yeah, it opened up a whole new avenue for, writing and expression. But for me, I'm always coming up with, riffs, small riffs, licks on the guitar or whatever. That comes very naturally. But to me, coming up with vocal ideas doesn't come that naturally to me. It just happens sometimes when I've written for different projects, bands. I come up with vocal ideas, but they don't really come often to me. So it's not that natural, but whatever. Fun. But it's pretty genius. It's a very physical instrument, just like drums. So yeah, singing and drumming is takes a lot from you.
I think it was you sort of joined up Dark Tranquillity, but I know you like joined as like a live guy in like 2017. So how'd you hook up with like Michael and Martin and everybody?
So I was in contact with, like I said, I was in contact with Niklas and Dean, one of the original guitar players, already in '99, and just like via email and phone, sometimes we were discussing cover ideas, and then throughout the years, I emailed with him sporadically, Niklas, and then I was getting really frustrated with Andromeda because we weren't touring much, and I felt I had way more to give. I want to do this on a higher level, on a professional level. So I was just reaching out to some bands, and I sent a message to Niklas just saying, hey, that if you ever need a guitar player for live or whatever, just send me a message and I would be interested. And that was it was interesting timing because at that time they were having, both Martin and Niklas were kind of in the process of leaving the band, at least live, because it was a bit of a transition period where they were not playing all the shows live, and they had some substitute guitar players. And so in around the time Michael was doing the guest vocals for Non-Exist, it was also the time when I got a mail from Niklas in late August 16 that, hey, there we have a European tour supporting Amon Amarth, spring of 17, and would you be interested in doing it? Because he was taking some time off to be with his newborn child. And I said, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, I will be there. So I started rehearsing them in December 16, and then actually we did the first tour I did with them was in Russia and Belarus in January, February 17. So that was the first tour. So that was about it. And yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, because I remember first seeing you in 2017. You played in Atlanta at the Masquerade with a Warbringer.
Oh yeah,
and I remember somebody that recognized me from going to so many shows there. Had like an extra VIP that they hooked me up, and I remember meeting you guys, and I actually have like the poster like right in the back. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that, and then the year after that, I saw you on the tour with Amorphous, Moonspell, and On Your Goddamn, and like the whole entire band, all four bands were like doing a meet and greet, and I had participated in that, and it was cool seeing you play there.
Cool, yeah. I remember that. I remember the Masquerade, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite venues in Atlanta, and I think that was like your first time playing in the States. So how was that like touring America for the first time?
Yeah, I was the 17 was the first proper tour I ever did in North America, but the first time for me was at the Prog Power Festival, also in Atlanta, actually in 2008 with Andromeda. We played.
Oh damn,
Prog Power.
Damn, I had no idea. And, I thought you never also toured the States.
Yeah, that was hardly a tour. It was just we did Prog Power, which was great, and we just did like a warm-up show down in Florida at some fucking dive bar or whatever.
Yeah, and it's just random.
Supposed to do a show very random, and we were supposed to do a show in Indianapolis, but they got canceled. maybe for the better, because you just looked at the map and it's so far, so it would have been a long drive. But yeah, 17, except for that, 17 was the first real tour in America. That was a lot of fun, for sure.
Yeah.
And Warbringer, a great band, fun
Oh yeah.
guys. It's nice.
Oh yeah. Then of course you joined the band officially in 2020, and you did probably one of my favorite albums from that year, Moment. So what was that whole writing and recording process like? Because I know it was that certain virus that shall not be named sort of happened and it took
Yeah.
over the world. So what was that like recording with the band for the first time?
It was a lot of fun. It was interesting. It was familiar and new at the same time. Writing with the band, it was kind of similar to what we did with Andromeda, like sitting with the computer with Cubase or Logic, whatever. It's the same. Sitting a lot of like in writing in the studio and having ideas from different people, merge. But with DT was even more of a teamwork. Like all the songs were processed over and over again and like rewritten several times, changing so many things all over. Like some of the songs you hardly remember how you got there in the end, because it started with something and then you change it about 20 times. And so it was interesting process. And then recording, I remember, yeah, that was just when COVID hit. We started recording in March, April 2020, and that was when everything started going to shit. So we actually we could take a bit more time finishing the album, because it wasn't that stress. The deadline wasn't that important. We could stretch it out a bit more, because originally we were supposed to finish the album in the summer and then go straight to US tour in September.
Yeah.
But that's canceled, of course, so we could stretch it out a bit more. But it was a fun time. It was exciting for me doing a first album with the Tranquillity, which is a band I've been a fan of since '93. I remember since Skydancer came out.
Wow.
Listening to that album, and I remember living most of that spring 2020. Lived at a hotel in Gothenburg and going to the studio, working over there and recording every day, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I got to see like the live stream y'all did. I think it was like a theater in Gothenburg where you pretty much
Oh
played
yeah,
the whole album in full, which I believe that's like the only time like Dark Tranquillity has played an album in its entirety. So tell me about like
yeah.
that live stream, because I still think it's a great one.
I haven't dared going back, listening and watching it. I used to really like watching live performances of mine, with bands like with Andromeda and stuff. But nowadays, I'm not that interested in that. But it's a really beautiful venue. It's a theater. It's like a proper old theater, and yeah, we played the whole album. But to me, the whole thing, I just felt really. It was just a sad. For me, the whole thing was just sad. I mean, it was a good thing to do, because it was a way for the fans to hear us, even though you couldn't do a concert. This was like it was something, at least, for people to see and connect with the
Yeah.
new music. But to me, it just felt sad to have everyone at that distance. Just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't like it much. If I'm going to be honest, I didn't enjoy it very much.
Yeah.
But
But
but I do appreciate that everyone that watched it was. I hope that I hope we did well, because I hope so. Because I don't
yeah.
know. I haven't heard it since.
Yeah, especially love like opening up with Phantom Days to going to Identical to None,
Yeah.
Dark Unbroken, Eyes of the
Hmm.
World. Like I think that whole album was great. I think it was like you guys' best album to date.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember the last time I saw you all was last year. You did that tour with that Cataclysm and Nailed into Obscurity, dude, which was actually that
Yeah.
made-up tour that was supposed to happen in 21, where it had Obscura in place of Cataclysm. But then I guess that got unofficially canceled or rescheduled, but with Cataclysm in
Yeah.
place, which that was a great show. And I remember even interviewing Mikkel before the show and that was still a great, because I think you guys definitely are great live as you are on CD.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
And then I know you're also starting work on the next album. So what's the
Yeah.
status with that?
Yeah, we started writing I mean, at least I was started collecting and doing some demos. I don't know, 2 years ago or something. But then we started writing together last August, I think. So it's been like a year full of finishing the songs. They're not really finished yet, but we're getting there. So yeah, it was getting more and more intense with the writing process during the spring and the summer, and now we have a bunch of songs we're going to start recording in October, and the deadline is last of December. So
Yeah.
And then we'll put out some singles throughout the year, and then the whole album will be out in late summer, because nowadays the strategy is because of streaming services, the new strategy is kind of to do singles before you drop the whole album to keep to keep the interest up. So that's the plan now, is to start recording. I think the drums start recording mid-October.
Yeah,
so
yeah, be perfect. Just like lead up to right when Prog Power next year, which I am looking forward to. It's going to be awesome.
Me too. I'm really excited coming back to Prog Power. That's going to be 16 years later, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. I remember I was at Prog
Have
Power.
You been there?
Yeah, Have
you been there a couple of times, or?
Yeah, I was actually at the latest one. I went to all 4 days, and when I saw like the announcements, like with you guys and Scar Symmetry and Leprous, I like lost my shit. I was like, "Fuck yeah!" Yeah,
that's cool.
I felt like I was
good bands.
I feel like I was like a little kid at Disney World. I was like, "Yeah."
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Great.
Yeah, but kind of like
awesome.
Like going back to the solo stuff. I know you did like your latest releases, Solipism and Weightless and Numb. Tell me about like those, and what's is there like a sort of like a different mind frame making like solo stuff compared to like what you do with like Dark Tranquillity, Andromeda, and Non-Exist?
It's it's pretty different. Well, maybe not. I guess the closest process wise or thinking wise is Non-Exist, because it's also like a solo project. But the kind of music style on the solo albums is way more. It's totally different. Like there's hardly any heavy stuff on there, and it's leaning way more to ambient or atmospheric sounds. So, because I just want to do something totally different than all the heavy stuff, because I like to listen to a lot of stuff that is not rock or metal at all. So that's just naturally my kind of inspirations that come out there. And but that first solo album was it was a kind of it's very dark, and it was a very dark period, as it was like 2020, all the pandemic shit, and my father died. He was very old, but still was like it's a kind of a milestone, and I turned 40. So I think there was, in general, for me, it was an increased awareness of death and mortality, I would say that. And so I just started writing these obscure songs they came out very fast. So that first solo album, Solipsism, was done very fast, and it just came out of nowhere, kind of. And there's no lyrics or vocals. The only thing that instead of lyrics, there are titles, which are pretty long sometimes. So it's almost like a little lyric in the title, and all the titles are in Swedish, because it felt like
kind of personal,
probably the most personal album. Yeah, so it felt, I don't know, it felt logical to have the titles in Swedish. You can use Google Translate if you want to know what it means. And then the second album was more. I guess I was collecting, because there was a lot of songs laying around on my computer that I wanted to release, and so there was a lot of old stuff I wanted to get out, because I thought, hey, this is good stuff. I want to release it. Why not? It's better to put it out there. Someone might like it than just hanging around on my computer. And so I added some new stuff with old stuff, and that became the second album, which is called, what's it called? I forgot what it's called. Second album is called.
No, I forgot too.
I have a blackout.
Yeah, I think that is called the
Weightless and Numb, of course.
Yeah,
Jesus
Weightless and
Christ.
Numb. There it was. I just said it. Like,
Sorry, total blackout.
me too.
Maybe you can edit that out.
Yeah, I probably will.
Yeah, Weightless and Numb is there is actually some songs on there with drums. Like the first song is more kind of a Pink Floyd, Tiamat, kind of a, you know, goth epic. It's not metal, but it has some heavy guitars. So, but yeah, the solo stuff is just totally free, what I want to do, and not really considering anything else. So it's pretty fun. But I don't really have any expectations. I mean, they're not even on physical format, because I know if I would press, vinyls and stuff, to be realistic, this I think is mainly going to gather dust in my wardrobe. So yeah, but it's just fun recording whatever, and not being limited to writing only metal stuff. So I like to do all kinds of different stuff.
All right. And kind of like one more thing I want to ask is talking about like your rig. I've always love like asking people this. Like, well, I'm just curious, like what kind of like guitars that you play, and like your strings, pedals, and amps, all that good stuff. I love to have like a little rig rundown.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not the biggest gear guy. I'm not really into gear. Sometimes it's kind of even annoying to myself that I'm that uninterested. I play mainly comparison guitars. I'm endorsed by Comparison, and with DT Live, I use the Kemper, because I really hate pedals live. I think they're just I mean, I'm busy playing and trying to, put on a show and connect with the audience. I don't really have any interest or time in waltzing around with pedals. So what we do is we have the whole, Kemper program change set up with MIDI, so the program changed by themselves, so I don't have to do anything. At home, when I record, I use Line 6 Pod XT. It's just straight into the sound, to the audio interface. I have a bunch of PV amps that I use. I was like PV, and with Andromeda, I used I had a Digitech RP6 and RP7 multi-pedal board with that I ran into a Mesa Boogie 5050 power amp and just a Houston Kettner 412 cabinet. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't have super much gear, actually. When I record, I like to use a lot of digital plugins in Logic and Cubase. So most of the time I record with either a just pretty clean signal or just a distorted signal with no delay, reverb, and then I put that on in the computer. Strings. Oh, you asking about strings? I use Dario mainly.
Awesome.
And straps from Richter, German strap company. Very good.
Cool. Cool. So
satisfied all my sponsors too.
Yeah, that's a good way to promote, man. So thank you, Johan, for taking this time to chat.
Thank you.
Is there just anything else you want to plug, or any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
I think I don't have much to add. I think you brought up a lot of the stuff that I've done musically. For almost like all my discography is covered in this interview, so I think it's very good. To the fans, I just want to say that I hope to see you on the next tour, and check out the new album when it's going to come. It's going to be great. Promise.
Awesome. So everybody, Johan Reinholdz from Dark Tranquillity. See you next time.